Hi guys, today we're gonna see fantasy romance recommendations for newbies. And we will approach this a little bit differently because depending on what you're used to read, I will be recommending a set of books. All of these books I believe are very good to get into fantasy romance, so you can pick whichever of these books if you feel that the plot makes more sense to you. But I really think that if you're used to read romance or young adult, new adult, or even adult fantasy, getting into fantasy romance is going to be easier if you start with those books. And we will start with romance because if you are an avid romance reader and you want to get a little bit into fantasy, want to get this world building that has epic elements, I really believe there are two books that will make this path real easy for you. And the first one is going to be From Blood and Ash. From Blood and Ash, it's going to be a long series. There's already 4 books out, but honestly, it's currently one of the most talked about fantasy romance books out there, so you really are kind of like safe getting into this train as of now. It starts being mainly romance. Eventually, it will get more into the fantasy element, the paranormal elements that this book has. It also has a prequel, which is also honestly pretty good. So if you have already read From Blood and Ash, I also really recommend reading the prequel. And From Blood and Ash follows our girl, Poppy. It's what it's called a maiden, this very sacred person that it's supposed to play a very important role within their society. Due to that, she has been veiled all of her life. No one can speak to her and she has very limited space. However, she has decided from very early on that she really deserves more, and she has been training, fighting, and one night she goes out, she finds this man, they have this little moment, and the story unfolds from there.
Really recommend.
Then following this line, another book series that it's already finished is a trilogy that I thought it had a lot of romance, it had a little bit of fantasy, but it wasn't kind of like the main thing. Again, mainly in the first book, it's the Bargainer series. The Bargainer series, it's really such a comfort read for me. It reads really fast because it has tons of dialogue. The dynamics between the characters, it's just so sweet, but at the same time, it's a little bit spicy. So I guess it checks a lot of boxes within romance. And this story talks about our girl that it's somewhat of a siren. She has this amazing power with which she can compel people to do whatever she likes. However, life for her hasn't been really easy, and she has been taking these favors from the bargainer. The problem is that every time that she asks for a favor, the bargainer kind of like enslaves you a little bit more. So she has a lot of tokens on her of these favors that she needs to repay, and no one knows why the bargainer hasn't called upon those favors before. But one night, the bargainer comes knocking at our main character's door, asking for her help dealing with a mystery, and the story unfolds from there. We move to young adult. Young adult usually has a little bit of romance within it, so the recommendations are already young adult stories as well, but these are books that for me had the romance kind of like at its peak.
Its main plot revolves around romance.
And the first one is gonna be Caraval. Caraval is a concluded trilogy, one of my favorites. The way in which the author writes, it's amazing. It's one of my favorite worlds to be. It really is whimsical, it really is cozy and magical. It has all of this circus vibe, but in such a way that it's also almost fairy tale-esque. It has enemies to lovers, an amazing slow burn, and it almost has a quest at its core, especially book 1. I've already said this before, but the main characters in this trilogy are honestly fantastic. And so the first book, Caraval, tells the story of these 2 sisters that are having kind of like not such a good life, and they really want to get away. And then one day they receive these invitations to go to Caraval, this circus that comes every now and then, that it's completely magical, and that every year has kind of like a game within it. But upon arriving, one of these girls is kidnapped, and the other soon discovers that this Caraval game will consist on finding her sister. And if she is not able to find her before this Caraval game ends, she will die. And so she will be following different clues. It's very different book 1 from book 2. It actually changes points of view, but it really worked for me as well. So really recommend. And another book that for me is kind of like a hidden gem, but I really think it works. It's The Black Witch. And The Black Witch is an unconcluded series, so damn it. But 4 books are already out. It seems that it's going to be 5, so we just need to wait a little bit longer. And this is a series that honestly masterfully plays with my heart. It really has one of the best love triangles that I've seen in a while. The characters are fantastic. The pace was really on point. And The Black Witch tells the story of our girl Elorin, who is a witch. She descends from the Black Witch, who is this very powerful mage that restructured how this whole world lived. In this world, there are different races, species. We will have wyverns, we will have nymphs, dragons. It's a lot. This story kicks off with her being part of the mages, who are the most conservative of them all, because in their society she needs to marry very fast, very young, and one of her family members saves her from all of these by taking her into the university, where she will need to meet other people, break her mental models of how the world works, and she will be part of a bigger scheme of things that it's happening. It's kind of like a revolution kind of stuff. Right, then if you are used to read new adult, we will have 2 books that are a little bit more spicy, but again it has this world building that it's really soft magic, so there are not clear rules around the magic, but it has a good world building around it. The first book, it's going to be...
everyone knows it at this point, A Court of Thorns and Roses.
And A Court of Thorns and Roses has already finished. It's very popular, so if you haven't read it, it's kind of like a must. I really enjoyed it back then when I read it. 5 years ago it's been already, but it really got me into reading again. I think this is one of the main things that fantasy romance has, that it really grabs you, it keeps you very hooked to the plot, to the relationship of our characters, and because of these I ignited again my love for fantasy, not just fantasy romance, but overall fantasy. So really recommend if you are searching a way to get into fantasy. And A Court of Thorns and Roses, it's a portal fantasy, which means that we will have 2 worlds, the human and then the fae. We will start with our girl Fairy being in the human world, and due to some event that happens right at the beginning of the book, she gets kidnapped in a way and she is drawn to the fairy world, to one of the different courts that exist. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so she will be kind of like in this spring court. She will meet this character that is tormented. There's this curse that she needs to break, all of that kind of stuff. It really changes though for books 2 and 3, so it starts being this retelling, but it won't continue that way.
I promise it will be sexy eventually, and I really enjoyed it.
And then we continue with Kingdom of the Wicked. Kingdom of the Wicked was so fun. It's an unconcluded trilogy. 2 books are already out. First book, it's less new adult than the second book, and first book, it's mainly about our main character and slowly building this relationship. And honestly, at its core, first book, it's a mystery. It's a little bit of a thriller. It really has enemies to lovers though, and has a very good pace, because Kingdom of the Wicked talks about our girl who is a witch, and we will live in this world where the witches exist, but they need to be really isolated one from another because they are afraid of the Inquisition and honestly just being burned. And our main character is such a good girl. She helps her people, but something very early on happens that set her in a very different path and really pushes her limits to the point to which she will need to contact a demon, one of the princes of hell. What I thought it was really interesting about Kingdom of the Wicked, it's this story of these 7 princes of hell that are the 7 sins reincarnated, the different witches and demons vibe. It was also really interesting. They both are witches. Black Witch, it's very different from Kingdom of the Wicked. I think that Kingdom of the Wicked had a little bit more of the witchery. In here, it's just you having a wand and, you know, just coexisting with different species and mainly having elemental magic. Meanwhile, in here, they do have these different rituals and there's a little bit more of lore around it. And last but not least, if you are used to read adult fantasy, there are 2 books that I think are fantastic. The first one is For the Wolf. For the Wolf, it's also an unconcluded series, but 2 books are already out. It's as well a Beauty and the Beast retelling, although it's done in such a good way. It's a very different, it's slightly dark. In terms of themes, we will have these enemies to lovers a little bit, and it will be a very good blend between character and plot driven, to be honest. And For the Wolf talks about this society where people believes that the second daughters to the throne need to be sacrificed to the wolf, this wolf that lives in the woods, and that it's taking care of the magic. He is ensuring that bad demons don't come and kill people. So people is like, okay, you will need to, you know, just be with the wolf. We sacrifice you for the greater good. So everyone kind of like acknowledge this, and this story will kick off with our main girl being, of course, the second daughter of the throne. I really, really liked it. It's not much about the magic, but the setting. I thought this forest that it's perpetually in twilight was very enchanting, and I was really drawn to the story. Also, the banter between our main characters was really, really fun, and also cute, and as well as passionate on time. So for me, it was such a perfect blend. And if you are used to reading adult fantasy, if you're good with soft magic system,
this should be it.
And last but not least, we have Daughter of the Moon Goddess. This is an Asian fantasy story that honestly I loved so much. For me, it was a very good blend between a character and a plot driven, because there's a lot happening. The pace is pretty fast, but we will be following our main character throughout different stages of her life. So at the end of the day, we will be able to know her a little bit more deeply. It has slow burn, it has a little bit of a love triangle, and overall it's a quest which I deeply enjoyed. And this book will talk about our girl that it's the daughter of the moon goddess, and she has magic but she needs to conceal it. But one day she cannot take it anymore. She does a little bit of magic, and as a result of that she will need to flee the moon, and she will endanger her mom. And that's why from that point onwards she will start this quest on how she can save her mom. But in order to do so, she will need to gain space within the heaven realm. It has a lot of folklore. Honestly, the world building as well felt very whimsical, very fairy tale-esque. And yeah, that was it for today. Let me know which one do you prefer, or if you have any other recommendations, please also let me know. And don't miss the video that we'll be adding into the description, where I rank different fantasy romance book, aka my comfort reads.